AltaSea at the Port of Los Angeles is a 35-acre campus dedicated to finding climate solutions through the ocean. From aquaculture to carbon capture to renewable energy, ocean exploration, and workforce training, AltaSea is helping to shape the future of the blue economy. As California looks ahead to its next governor, we believe the ocean must be central to that conversation. And that's why AltaSea is hosting a series of discussions on how each candidate would protect our ocean, grow blue economy jobs, and build a more resilient future for California.
Hello, and welcome to AltaSea at the Port of Los Angeles, one of the world's largest blue economy hubs that are bringing climate solutions from the ocean to California and all over the world. Things in aquaculture, in wave and tidal energy, in carbon capture, and in underwater robotics, in port decarbonization, and anything to do with the blue economy. I'm Terry Tamminen, the President and CEO. And as we prepare to elect our next governor, we think it's very important for our governor candidates to be able to tell us their vision for the blue economy and for the ocean. We have 1,100 miles of coastline here in California, and obviously are very much an ocean-related economy and a place of enjoyment and natural beauty. So today we're very honored to be seated with Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Mayor Ragosa served as the mayor from 2005 to 2013. And in his final year as mayor, he helped launch the bold vision that became the transformation of City Dock Number 1, the first place where there was commerce in the Port of Los Angeles, into a world-class urban marine research and innovation center, AltaSea. And before that, he served as the majority leader in the state of California in the Assembly from 1996 to 98, the Speaker in the Assembly from 98 to 2000. Thank you for joining us today, Mayor Villaraigosa.
Terry, Antonio, it's fine.
Antonio, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Well, let me just start by asking you about the ocean. I claim that we're an ocean state and it's very important to all Californians. But why should the ocean and its priorities be important to the next governor?
Well, first of all, we have a coast that extends from the Oregon border to the Mexican border. We have a pristine ocean front here in California that is a tourist attraction. It's part of, our economy in that respect. But what you're doing is really, really important because it builds on the economic might. When you talk about the ocean, has a lot to do with our ports. We have the LA Long Beach port, the San Diego port, the Oakland port, and the Port Hueneme. We move close to half of the seaborne goods that enter the United States. And taking advantage of that, leveraging that, and transitioning from that is what we thought about when we announced AltaSea way back then. The port is an engine of the Southern California economy, and the port's an engine of the California economy. And we don't take advantage of our proximity to the ocean in the way that we should. One of the things I did early, and as I went on a tour with you, I mentioned, I did the first climate adaptation study in the United States for a city. And one of the things we know is that the ocean is rising, the seas are rising, and places like the port are going to be impacted by that. Places like Venice and all up and down the coast. We need to think through what we do to mitigate that and take advantage and build on our ports for, as you call it, the blue economy, which has something to do with the green economy, by the way.
Yes, for sure.
Because a lot of what you're doing in the blue economy is climate friendly, is conscious that the ocean is not just a resource, it's an opportunity for us to do everything we can to clean up the ocean, to green the ocean, if you will, in the blue economy.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, another area that's obviously very important to the state and to governors are jobs. And as we talked about today, there are going to be very different jobs in the blue economy than what we see today. So, for example, here at AltaSea, we work with 15 community colleges on certificate programs in things like aquaculture, so growing seaweed, kelp, and extracting food and fuel and pharmaceuticals. We have another certificate program in underwater robotics for mapping and sensors and security and all the different things that robotics can do. And a third one in hydrogen in the maritime economy, which will be a very different fuel. So, talk to us for a little bit about the importance of these jobs to this region and to the state, and how you might see being able to help more young people get into those jobs, whether it's supporting programs at community colleges or in other ways.
When I was mayor of LA from 2005 to 2013. We had a big recession. And that recession was created by the crisis of 2009 that had a lot to do with home ownership and speculation. And one of the things that helped us through that was I was focused like a laser beam on workforce development. And so what we did was we identified, I don't recall the exact number, but let's say 10 industries that were growing. And we focused on creating training programs for those industries, and particularly for people that had been displaced by the recession. Here, the blue economy is contributes to the California economy, and it's going to be more and more a part of its future going forward. So we need to be thinking ahead and training people for those jobs. We were talking just a few minutes ago about underwater welding, about these kelp and seaweed farms, about energy. By the way, let's be clear. We will never, ever have oil pumps off of the California coast while I'm governor, okay? But we do want wind turbines. Fortunately, there's some people that don't want anything, but we do want wind turbines. And there's technologies now that you showed me that allow those turbines to operate even when there's not a lot of wind, with using the waves to create that energy. Those are the kinds of forward-thinking, technologies we need to embrace, train for, and make a greater part of the future of the California economy.
Let me ask about that in terms of equity as well. There are some in this country who sadly don't believe in equity and bringing forward the people that have been the most disadvantaged, or as you mentioned before, had been left behind in some way or another. As governor, how would you make sure that these jobs are equitably distributed and the opportunities are there for people, for example, right around the port here, who have perhaps suffered some of the most impacts from traffic and congestion and air pollution, which is being addressed by the port and by state regulators, but who may not have the same job opportunities as others do? How, based on your past history, both as mayor and in the state legislature, how might you see making sure that these opportunities and these exciting new industries are available to everyone?
Well, you're right. We're living at a time of reaction to the fact that, we believe in equal opportunity. And so what I could tell you, let me tell you what we did as mayor in construction jobs. We didn't talk about race or ethnicity as much as we talked about high unemployment census tracts, high poverty census tracts. There are a lot of those in, a decent radius of this port. So we should focus there. We should focus on those communities, as you said, who have been the most impacted. And you could do so in a way that, focuses on high poverty, high unemployment, census tracts. The goal for workforce development is training people for jobs of the future, but focusing on the people that are maybe underemployed or have been laid off from jobs that previously paid well and have been replaced with jobs that don't. So I'm a big believer in that. That means collaboration with our community colleges, with our high schools. We need a lot more career technical education. And in this area, for instance, San Pedro, Banning, some of the schools around here should be collaborating with AltaSea to kind of develop majors that focus on this blue economy.
Mayor, let me ask you a question that you touched on in one of your earlier remarks about the port itself and the ports in general in California as being such important economic drivers. As you mentioned, almost half of the goods that come in by ship for the entire country come through our port complex right here in LA and Long Beach. But that's also meant that there has been a disproportionate share of traffic and air pollution and so on, much of which has been tackled by the port very laudably. They've reduced particulate matter by 90% in
Well,
the
let's
last...
be clear. Let's be clear. When I became mayor, we were as backward as any port in the United States of America. It was the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, and it still is a big emitter of greenhouse gases. I made it the greenest port in the world. I think it's really important that people understand that. I did so with a balance. I said to the enviros who had been suing us for years, we can't mitigate the impacts of port greenhouse gases and pollution without growing the port, because you need the money that comes with it. And I said to the operators at the port, maritime operators, you won't be able to grow it without greening it, because they're going to sue and on the environmental impacts of growing it. So I developed a partnership and a collaboration that included labor, the ILWU, the Teamsters, environmental groups, and the communities of San Pedro and Wilmington. And that's how, under the leadership of Geraldine, well, under my leadership, but as the person who drove it, Geraldine Nance was that person who actually sits on your board, I understand.
Right,
So,
right.
and brought this to me way back when. So what I can tell you is, yes, we've done a lot, but we still need to do more. But we can't do it in a way that undermines good jobs. We have to do it in a way that creates that balance. So as an example, I know the port has said sometimes to the Air Quality Management District, slow down a little bit. We want to do this, but we have to develop the technologies to do it, because this port is too important. We can't close it down.
Are there things we can do with California's other big innovative industry, which is Silicon Valley, AI and various other techniques? I know that, for example, today a lot of truck traffic has been reduced just by having timing, giving a truck driver a time to come instead of having them all line up at 6 in the morning with their engines running, as an example. Are there other things?
We did that too.
Yeah.
We-
So are there other ways that maybe we can combine some of our different technology industries to...
I think we have to be open to that, but I also think we have to be careful. We're not going to eliminate every job here. There are safety issues, involved. There are issues related to the good jobs that, exists because of the port. And importantly, there are issues, when you talk about automation, it sounds great, but it also makes our port a opportunity for bad actors. And we have to be careful with that.
Right, that's a good point. Last quick question I want to ask you to address, and this won't be a quick one perhaps, but we're obviously living in a time, and as governor, you'll be taking over at a time when we're still going to be in, I would call, an adversarial relationship with our federal government. There's just no other way to put it. We have an administration that clearly has not shared the values of California in many ways, and is openly hostile in terms of funding and various other things where you would hope that whether it's a Democrat or Republican, there's at least some common ground. How would you tackle the challenges with the federal government as governor, and particularly as they might apply to the ocean and things like we talked about earlier? We're big supporters of offshore wind, and that's something that can create a lot of jobs, a lot of clean energy, and yet the federal government has opposed that. So are there...
Well, they've gone further. They're not for offshore wind. They are for offshore oil rigs. California values are pushing back against offshore oil rigs and drilling off our coast, but says that we ought to have wind technologies off our coast so that we can green our environment, create good jobs, and do everything we can to address climate change. What I've said is we have to do it in a way that's balanced. We have to do it in a way that doesn't put it on the backs of working and middle-class families. But as far as pushing back on the federal government, look, who better to push back on what this government is doing than somebody who came out of the civil rights movement and the labor movement? We will push back to defend California values, but we'll do so at the same time looking at what we've done to create some of the affordability issues that we have. So yes, we'll push back against the federal government. I won't be tweeting all day about him. What I'll do is roll my sleeves up and focus on improving the quality of life for more people in this state, challenging the federal government when they do things like tariffs, which disproportionately hurt California because we export a diverse set of goods. In fact, the most diverse set of goods in the United States. We're the second biggest exporter. Texas is the biggest, but they export oil. So we're not, because they export oil and because this administration is for that, we're not having pushback from those companies. We also export agricultural products, technology, airplane parts, and the like. We are particularly impacted by these tariffs, which are taxes. So we'll push back on tariffs. We'll push back on these ICE raids. We'll push back on the Trump administration's failure to reimburse the Palisades and Altadena for the damage caused by these fires. But we'll also focus on the challenges we face and the problems that we created.
Well, that's a great way to end, although let me give you one last opportunity to comment on anything that you've seen here today at AltaSea, especially since this was your vision and you helped get it launched. We like to say here that our future is blue, but let you put it in your own words.
First of all, it wasn't my vision. I approved it. I don't recall who brought this to Geraldine. She brought it to me. I immediately bought into it. So in the sense that, yes, it was my administration that catalyzed the approval of this and made a lot of this happen. But a lot of good people from the philanthropy, from the business community, from academia have really helped to make it grow. And what I'd say is this: in addition to being an incubator of technologies, a conduit for educating young people, a effort, or an opportunity for academe to participate and turn their ideas into real technologies, if you will. That's what makes this great. And when you look at this with the AltaSea Tech Center that I also did, this is the kind of thing California needs to do, not just in LA, but throughout the state.
Mayor Antonio, thank you so much for joining us today.
Terry, thank you for having me.